At Advance Auto Parts, we don't do anything just part way. We go full throttle. We don't just sell batteries. Oh no, we install them fast and free with purchase on most vehicles. And we mean fast. If strapping on an experimental jetpack would help us install your battery any faster, we'd do it. Unfortunately, jetpacks can be squirrely. Too bad, because we really wanted those things. Fast, free battery installation at Advance. Service is our best part.
Advance Auto Parts.
Little Caesars would like to remind everyone that their large hot and ready pepperoni pizzas are still only $5, and their large hot and ready 3-meat treat pizzas with pepperoni, sausage, and bacon are just $8. But such a great deal on pizza doesn't need advertising. Welp, see you later.
Pizza.
At participating locations plus tax.
Blind placebo-controlled trial.
At Advance Auto.
Welcome to Spooky Southcoast.
Look, I know the supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
AM 1420, WBSM presents Spooky South Coast with your hosts Tim Weisberg and Matt Costa.
Good evening and welcome to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here. Can you tell it's been about a month since we've been on the air? Because it's like 10:37 and we're just getting the show started due to technical issues, which is always awesome. I don't think we're going to have Spooky TV. Is it working? Well, let me introduce you.
Hello.
Back on the program, the one, the only, the silent assassin, Matt Costa.
I'm here.
You are. Moniz isn't,
Believe
though.
it or not, I am here.
I do have to ask you, is this a one-time visit, or are you making a weekly return, or?
I'm going to try to pop in every once in a while.
Can
Check
you
up on you guys.
Can you do me a favor?
What's up?
Can you be here next week?
I'm going to try.
7th anniversary.
Is it? Already?
Yes. We may be working on a program, a topical program, that's the downloads folder. Well, right on the air. We may be working on a more topical program. If things come together, it's going to be a very important show. Should everything fall into place, but otherwise, the plan is to just kind of have a little 7th anniversary party for ourselves too, and reflect on some memories over the years. But that will keep everybody posted on that on SpookySouthCoast.com. So it's great that the NFL playoffs are, done on Saturdays, but now we get the Bruins to worry about. That's all right, though. They were over plenty of time, just we weren't ready. But we've still got a great show planned for you, and you can watch along on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com for as long as our internet holds out. You can join in the chat room there as well. And, of course, if you're new to the program, we talk about the paranormal each and every Saturday night, and we podcast our show on iTunes and wherever podcasts are found. And you can also get the streaming audio recording from YouTube as well. We post that up there, again, provided it works. We're pretty multimedia now.
Yeah, kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
slightly.
You should have been here in October when we were getting 200-something thousand downloads of each show.
That's outrageous.
Right, we had over 1 million downloads just in October alone.
Get out of here.
I'm serious. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to get right into tonight's topic because we are running short of time already. If you've been watching pretty much any TV show over the last few weeks, you've been seeing the trailer for the film Warm Bodies that's coming out. And it looks kind of quirky. It looks like a lot of fun. It's actually based on the novel Warm Bodies, which was written by our guest tonight. Isaac Marion was born near Seattle in 1981 and has lived in and around that city ever since. He began writing in high school and self-published 3 novels before finally breaking through with Warm Bodies. He currently divides his time between writing, playing obscure instruments in obscure bands, and exploring the country in a 1977 GMC motorhome named Boleyn. And anybody that can play obscure instruments is cool with us. I mean, we're big fans of the, what's the theremin that you always wanted to get?
I never built one, but I've always wanted to. And
we also had a little collection of crazy instruments there for a while. We had the pan flute and all that kind of stuff. So good evening, Isaac. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks.
What's the most obscure instrument that you play?
Well, the theremin is one of them, but
Nice.
It's fairly well known these days, so it's probably not as obscure as this other thing I just got called the Theravox ET4, which is loosely based on the Ondes Martineau. It has kind of a sliding ring that you use to control the pitch.
Nice.
Fairly, maybe even, well, not quite as eccentric as the theremin. It's hard to beat that, but much more playable.
Do you find there's a lot more call for the obscure instruments from the obscure bands, not so much from the mainstream stuff?
Well, that's probably true. They're mostly my obscure bands, so it's obscure in the sense that no one knows about them, not in the sense that they're especially exotic.
Well, I mean, the Beach Boys broke up again. You know, when Mike Love go with his version of the Beach Boys, they might need a theremin player for good vibrations.
True. Yeah, actually, the Theravox thing that I got is actually what they used on Good Vibrations, or an early version of this concept. So a lot of people think it was a theremin. But.
Wow. I learned something new on this program. That's why I do it. All right,
We're
well,
going to talk about instruments.
I know. Hey, let's talk about zombies, but before that. Yeah. So the first time that you were on the program last year, I was actually out of the studio. I was covering the Celtics from my day/night job, so I didn't get the chance to speak with you then. And even then, there was already a buzz around Warm Bodies, and now it's just exploded with the film on the verge of coming out now. I mean, things must be getting crazy for you.
Yeah, you could say that. I can't remember exactly when we did our last interview, but I think it was before anyone knew that the movie was in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So, the book never really got very heavy marketing for that reason, more or less. They knew that this would take care of it sooner or later. So yeah, it's a very different scene.
So how long was it after the book came out that you were approached about it being a movie, or was it trying to be sold, you know, kind of hand in hand with the idea that it would make a great film?
It didn't happen. The two things kind of happened separately but simultaneously, more or less. The book was sort of being passed around in both literary and film circles, and there's kind of a lot of crossover there, and it just kind of got into my agent's hands and this producer's hands at the same time, more or less. And so the producer was working on getting a film deal for it at the same time that the agent was working on a book deal. So yeah, it was a very strange kind of backwards process in that there was actually a film studio on board slightly before there was a publisher.
Well, when I first heard about the concept of the book, when we were planning on having you on the first time, which I think was last May, and when Chris, our show's booker, Chris Balzano, he's our content director, and when he had told me kind of the gist of what the book was about, I was kind of scratching my head a little bit, because I'm thinking a zombie book from a zombie perspective, I mean, how much can there really be, you know, going on in the brain of a zombie? And right from the beginning of this book, we realized that, you know, this is a very, you know, pardon the pun here, fleshed out character.
Yeah, there's a lot of good puns to make. My agent and I, editor and I have been trying to refrain for years now, but they just keep coming out.
You can't keep a good pun down. That's the problem.
No.
Well, I mean, when did the inspiration first strike you to use a zombie as basically almost a metaphor for where society is going today?
Well, it started out kind of just as a little throwaway idea. I just wrote a really short story based off the concept. It was just like 7 pages long, and was kind of just a brief little vignette about this zombie talking about his life after the apocalypse. And I just kind of, with that, the initial idea just kind of occurred to me that, oh, this might be interesting to see what would come out of me if I you know, put myself in this perspective and just start writing. And wrote this really short little story that kind of went in a different direction than the book did, but still established some of the ideas of like what sort of things a zombie might think about. And it was kind of just a gradual process from there of expanding the idea and then just continuing to just, I guess I do a lot of stories that are from perspectives of strange people and creatures and things, and I just kind of dive into it and start imagining scenarios from that point of view, and then the results come out of it. So as I was doing that, and as I was figuring out what the story was going to be, it sort of took me by surprise as to how many parallels there were between the traditional zombie mythos and like how they function, and how a lot of people in the real world function, including myself at the time, which I was kind of trying to go through my own little transformation. So ended up becoming a fairly personal story, surprisingly.
Well, I think the good thing about it, though, is that you do kind of pay homage to a lot of those zombie beliefs, but at the same time, you tear apart a lot of them, too, because, I mean, a lot of these constructs that we have for the modern-day approach to zombies, we probably can thank, Roger Corman for more than anything, because they're more grounded in the later half of the 20th century belief of zombies than they may be in the voodoo rituals and the zombies that first burst onto the scene in 1931.
Right. Yeah, there's been so many different versions of them, and every time, I mean, I guess when they first came onto the scene, there wasn't really this rabid fan base sort of insisting on what they have to be and how they work and everything. At this point, there are definitely some purists who insist that here's how a zombie works, here's where they come from, and no other options are possible. And I always just point to these other versions. No one's making movies or comics or anything about the Haitian voodoo zombies anymore, and that's where it started. And then there was the space radiation from Night of the Living Dead, and just all these different versions that they take. So rather than pick one of those, I kind of just combined them all. And since the narrator doesn't really have any memory, doesn't know where he is or where he came from, it made sense that he would just kind of have a few vague theories as to what's going on, but he doesn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it, because at the point that the story starts, this has been the reality for many years already, so they're not really worried about talking about how it happened.
Well, I think there's a great parallel, too, between today's society being zombies, and there's a scene in the trailer that I think basically captures a lot of the tone of what you're trying to say in those early parts of the book, when they kind of do a cutaway from the way the zombies look in their current state roaming around the airport to how they would have looked before, with the devices and the laptops and the tablets and everything that they've got their faces stuck into. I mean, were you consciously thinking of that in the back of your mind as you're creating these characters, about the idea that they kind of already were slaves to that type of grind, that mental grind, even before?
Yeah, definitely. That's sort of one of the major themes, is that there actually isn't that much difference between the human society in this world and the zombie society, and that it's a lot of those trends and traits that sort of lead to this plague. He talks about how they all sort of rot at different rates. Some of them are trying hard to not let it happen, and they tend to stay fresh longer than the other ones just rot into skeletons fairly quickly. And it has a lot to do with their internal state and kind of how much fire they have inside. So a lot of the human survivors are pretty much on the edge of being zombies without technically having the plague yet.
And when you're creating these characters and you're trying to give them depth and you're trying to give them life, it's probably easy to fall into the mold of a zombie being a villain. I mean, how hard was it to shake off kind of those preconceived notions of what these creatures needed to be in order to convey the type of narrative that you were trying to with them?
I think the hard part was trying to do that while still being true to what that mythos is, because I didn't want to sanitize it and just make R the main character, make him just a handsome, nice guy who doesn't behave like a zombie, and because that would be, if he's not doing those things, then it could be any given monster, and just make him nice. It's not really it's not fair to the concept. So the hard part was trying to make him a sympathetic character while still following the rules of what he has to do to be alive, and kind of not trying to gloss over the fact that he kills people on a regular basis and is a pretty disgusting creature.
Well, but I mean, even though he does do that. I mean, and it mentions it in the trailer. Of course, I'm not really spoiling anything for people who haven't read the book, but he's conflicted about it. He's not happy that he has to do it.
Right. But he's not, for however long he's been in this state, he's conflicted but very apathetic. At the beginning of the story, in the book at least, he's kind of vaguely aware that this is not a great situation, that he'd like to be different, but he's never really tried to get out of it because he just is resigned to that being the state of things, and he doesn't really want to kill people, but he knows he has to, so he just keeps doing it, or he assumes that he has to.
And there is more of a cerebral quality to these zombies than there has been in those type of characters in the past, because normally we assume that zombies are kind of motivated by a basic guttural instinct to feed, and that they just maybe chose brains because it's the best part. But your zombies actually have a reason for craving brains.
Yeah, they when they eat the brains, they get sort of flashbacks of that person's life and relive some of the more intense memories of that person's life and feel all the same things. So it becomes sort of like a drug to them, where they get these little flashes of what it's like to be human again, and feel strong emotions and pleasure and things that they don't have anymore. And so they crave that even more so than just the basic life energy of the bodies themselves, because that stuff keeps them functioning, but the brain is sort of like a little bit of a finer pleasures in life that they get to enjoy for a few minutes.
And that's what I thought was kind of an interesting and unique twist, because in order to crave that and to have that experience, they've been able to hold on to whatever little bit of their humanity there is in order to crave that return to it. So they're not just mindless, lifeless creatures. They actually have this, and of course, I don't want to, start asking, picking apart all your theories and asking you, what you think was the cause of this, because, like you said, you're working on a sequel. So yeah. We'll leave some of that open. But the fact that they do crave that return to humanity, I think is interesting, because almost from the beginning, you can feel sympathetic toward them instead of just feeling as them being horrific creatures.
Yeah, I think some of them have more of that remaining than others. There's some that are pretty far gone, and there's some sort of in between where they do enjoy those pleasures, but it's in a sort of a very basic way. Like our friend at the beginning is not as evolved as him. He it likes eating the brains of simple like military grunts who don't really have much beyond just shooting things and having sex, and that's what he's into. R likes more of the sophisticated minds that he can get a hold of. So there's kind of different levels of that humanity, but I think that the idea is that all of them, at least on some level, if they're not actually longing to be human again, they at least miss those feelings. I mean, none of them are capable. They don't get any of the pleasures of life. They can't have sex. They can't eat food. There's really nothing that they enjoy. It's only just neutral, or they're in pain and hungry. So that's as far as they can get. It's just kind of a neutral feeling. So when they get those little flashbacks of strong memories from someone's life, it's sort of like a brief high, and then they come back to normal and sort of resume how they felt.
Well, you mentioned not being able to have sex, but it's not for a lack of trying. From the way that you describe it in the book, and at first I was like, gee, that kind of seems out of place with the zombie mythology, and it seems kind of strange, and to me it was kind of off-putting to have it in there at first. But then I realized like it's also allegorical to how a lot of people probably view sex, where it's just two bodies rubbing up against each other type of thing.
Yeah, and that was kind of the idea there.
I was going to ask you if that was conscious or subconscious, and if it was conscious, how do your girlfriends feel about that?
Yeah, it was definitely conscious, and that's sort of one of a recurring theme is that what the zombies do, they do things still. They sort of mindlessly repeat these functions from human life. Like they assign each other mates, and they just kind of go through the motions of these active. They have church where there's just stand there and make noise, but nothing actually happens. But all these kind of familiar rituals of human life, they continue to do them just sort of as like a reflex action, but they don't know what they mean or why they're doing it. And sex is one of those things where they're just doing it because it's instinctual, but they don't really get any pleasure out of it. And I think all those things are true of a lot of humans.
Well, we've only got a few minutes here before we have to take a break for the network news, but when we come back on the other side of it, I want to get more into, first of all, the process of turning the book into a film and some of the differences and similarities between the two storytelling mediums. And I also want to talk with you a bit about the zombie culture that we're in these days, because it seems like, we've gone through the vampire phase and we're coming out of it now, and now the zombies are hot, and that's going to be, milked dry for a little while, and then they'll probably move on to the next weird supernatural creature they can think of.
Yeah, who knows what'll be next?
If I knew, we wouldn't be talking, we'd both be writing. But one question I will ask you before we take the break is, originally you started out self-publishing your own books, but this book, Warm Bodies, is available everywhere, right?
Yeah, it is now. I briefly self-published it before, kind of just the moment I finished writing it. I printed out a few hundred copies, but it was never. It was always with the intent of trying to pursue a traditional publisher. So there were a few hundred copies out there in the year or so that it took to get everything put together with the publisher. But yeah, this is a standard publishing scenario.
And of course, your website is isaacmarion.com, and you're also on Twitter at IsaacInSpace, and people can follow along with your different social media feeds, and it seems like you're posting something pretty much every day. Yeah,
I stay fairly active on Twitter, and I've got a Tumblr blog for photography that I do, and kind of I dabble a little bit in most of the networks, but Twitter is probably my flagship network.
And it seems like you've got your hand in a number of different projects in addition to this book and the movie coming out.
Which ones are you referring to?
Well, just between your music and you seem to have an avid interest in photography and the storytelling that comes with that as well.
Yeah, I do a lot of different things. Kind of some of them are more like hobbies, and I mean right now writing is the only thing that is serious on my plate. I do music on the side a little bit. I used to do painting and would like to kind of get back into that, but yeah, there's a lot of crossover in a lot of those mediums. Like in my photography page, a lot of the photos are sort of slideshows that have stories blended into them, and various different things that I do kind of all involve writing in some way or another.
So check it all out during the news break here. Just go to isaacmarion.com or go to SpookySouthcoast.com, because we have it linked up right there on the front page. And you can also check out the trailer there, both for the book and for the film. We're going to take a break for the news. We'll be right back on Spooky South Coast.
Coast turns to for local news, talk, weather, and sports. WBSM New Bedford, AM 1420, WBSM.
From ABC News, I'm Chuck Sievertson. The bloody hostage siege is over at the gas field in the Algerian desert, with plenty of bodies to show for it. Algeria's government says after a final assault, 32 terrorists are dead, 23 hostages are dead, including one American believed executed by the militants. ABC's Nick Schifrin in Sicily, where some survivors recuperate at the U.S. Naval Hospital.
For those who survived, there is relief. Many are on their way home, desperate to return to their families. But they are the fortunate. Many are still missing. The daughters of hostage Kenneth Whiteside took to Twitter. They haven't heard from him since the siege began.
North African security analyst Jeff Porter says of the terrorists,
they came from Mauritania, they came from Mali, they may have come from Libya, they may have come from as far afield as Canada.
Those militants were headquartered in neighboring Mali.
More troops from neighboring West African countries are coming into Mali each day to support French soldiers battling against al-Qaeda-linked rebel groups in the country's north, including members of the terrorist organization led by Mokhtar Belmokhtar, who was behind the devastating devastating hostage crisis in Algeria. The first 300 of an eventual 3,000 West African troops to arrive in Mali have been trained by the U.S. Bazi Kanani, ABC News, Bamako, Mali.
One of the greatest baseball hitters of all time, Hall of Famer Stan the Man Musial, is dead at 92, winning many batting awards and MVPs and leading the St. Louis Cardinals to 3 World Series championships. President Obama presented Musial the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2011.
He was the first player to make, get this, $100,000. Even more shocking, he asked for a pay cut when he didn't perform up to his own expectations. You can imagine that happening today.
Legendary Baltimore Orioles manager and fellow Baseball Hall of Famer Earl Weaver is dead at 82. You're listening to ABC News.
Introducing a faster way to push-to-talk. AT&T Enhanced Push-to-Talk. AT&T delivers more of what your business needs. Instant communication, up to 1,000 contacts, plus a broad array of devices and platforms. Visit att.com/enhancedPTT3 to get your business started with a free Samsung Rugby 3. You push-to-talk, we pushed it further. AT&T, rethink possible.
Limited time offer. Free phone on new activations only. Requires 2-year commitment to eligible voice and data plans plus activation of AT&T Enhanced Push-to-Talk service.
Hey, honey.
Hi, Dad.
What you drawing?
It's our house. That's you.
Oh.
Me.
Huh?
Mom and Josh.
Wow.
Playing ball.
You are becoming quite the artist.
When you're a kid, you don't know that home ownership builds communities, that owning a home contributes to higher self-esteem and better test scores. You just know that home is where you play, grow, and learn. The National Association of Realtors wants you to know that home ownership matters to our families, our neighborhoods, and our country. Learn more at houselogic.com/homeownership.
Want to see the cars? Industry reps and media types have had their chance. Now, this year's North American International Auto Show in Detroit just opened up to the public today.
There's just so many cars. There are 59 worldwide reveals. First time these cars have been seen anywhere in the world.
Bob Schumann, Auto Show Vice President.
Check out the new Corvette, #1. Check out the new Jeep Grand Cherokee. There's a hot Maserati I really like. There's an NSX Acura. I love that. If it had door handles, I'd drive that home right now, but it's just a concept.
Where's the price of oil, which affects the price of gasoline you buy? It remains at a 4-month high. New data showing China's economy rebounding and a global demand forecast rose. A federal judge says the IRS lacks authority to impose new regulations, including a competency exam on hundreds of thousands of tax preparers. The regs would also have required an annual application fee and 15 hours of continuing education courses. The IRS argued the measures were needed to address a growing problem of poorly prepared returns. Summing up in a nutshell, what's learned from former champion cyclist Lance Armstrong's interview with Oprah? ABC's Neil Karlinski.
We now know that living a lie and pulling off one of the greatest cheating scandals in sport was as much a part of Lance Armstrong's DNA as riding a bike. But the man who still carries anger over being abandoned by his father at the age of 2 came to a crossroads when he had to admit to his own son that he'd been lying to him his entire life.
This is ABC News.
Homeowners, in today's world, no neighborhood is immune from burglaries. Get a state-of-the-art monitored home security system from Protect Your Home, your authorized ADT dealer, and get peace of mind today. Call right now, 1-888-213-2244, 1-888-213-2244. Local permit fees may be required. License number CAACO 6320, KY City of Louisville 483, and FLEC 13003427. Call for additional numbers. Call now, 1-888-213-2244.
Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
Psst. Hey, over here.
What?
Right here, on the side of the house.
Who said that?
Look down. I'm right at your feet.
Wait, the basketball?
Yes, the basketball. Right down here, where the kids left me a long time ago. Man, you know how lonely it is being a ball and not being able to bounce or roll?
Excuse me?
Remember when you got me for the kids? You said, now kids, you have no excuse not to go outside and play.
Uh-huh.
Wow. I'll miss flying through the air and hearing the shouts of joy when I swish through the basket. What do you say? Could you give me a little air and remind the kids of how fun I still am?
Okay. Oh, wow. You are flat.
Easy, I'm ticklish. Let's get bouncing.
As Native American parents and caregivers, our encouragement to healthy lifestyles for our kids is helping them get outside and play. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov/Indian Country. Brought to you by USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
Advance Auto Parts, we don't do anything just part way. We go full throttle. We don't
So,
just sell
Jacqueline,
batteries.
yes, Mom?
Oh, no. We install them fast and free with purchase on most vehicles, and we mean fast. If strapping on an experimental jetpack would help us install your battery any faster, we'd do it. Unfortunately, jetpacks can be squirrely. Too bad, because we really wanted those things. Fast, free battery installation at Advance. Service is our best part. Advance Auto Parts.
Little Caesars would like to remind everyone that their large hot and ready pepperoni pizzas are still only $5, and their large hot and ready 3-meat treat pizzas with pepperoni, sausage, and bacon are just $8. But such a great deal on pizza doesn't need advertising. Welp, see you later.
Pizza, pizza.
At participating locations plus tax.
I am precisely where I like to be, and I hope that you're with us this next.
Welcome to spooky Southcoast.
Look, I know the supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does.
AM 1420, WBSM presents Spooky Southcoast with your hosts Tim Weisberg and Matt Costa.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin, Matt Costa. Science advisor Matt Moniz is not here, but we have the silent assassin in studio.
I am here.
And contrary to popular belief, you were not fired.
No.
You did not quit.
Can't get fired if you don't get paid.
Right, exactly. You were just otherwise incapacitated.
Yeah. Battling with addiction.
Addiction to work.
Work and monsters.
Monsters?
Yeah. The energy drink.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's become a problem for kids. I don't know if you heard, like, kids have been hospitalized.
Yeah, they've been dying left and right. And
right.
Things like that.
As you're rocking a Monster sweatshirt.
Yeah, that's how much I was addicted. I got that. They just gave me stuff.
It's like you got Monster Miles.
I do. Have you seen my backpack?
No, you have a Monster
backpack,
backpack too?
This is how many. It's so many. I'm so embarrassed.
Really? So you're like part of like the Monster Country store? You get like the catalog?
No, they just have my address.
When do you get in the canoe?
It's actually a Harrier jet. They're gonna send. They're just gonna drop it off.
The old Pepsi Harrier jet.
Yeah, nobody got it, so they
just put a Monster logo.
They just gave it to a Monster. Yeah.
Remember when we were gonna collect Marlboro Miles to try to get the canoe?
I did for a while. I didn't even smoke. I just killed.
Yeah, we just used to pick them up off the ground.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the monster stuff, it fits in great with tonight's show because we're talking about zombies with our guest, Isaac Marion. We're going to get right back into the discussion. But before we do, I just have a couple of notes that I want to make quick, brief announcements about. The first, of course, is that we do have a couple of friends of the program who are currently hospitalized. We want to send out well wishes and have everybody send out their thoughts and prayers. Cody Ray Dabians, who debuted his show, Supernatural Reality on Spooky TV just a couple of weeks ago. He took a turn for the worse in his battle with leukemia, so he's back in the hospital and undergoing intensive chemo, and he's waiting on a bone marrow transplant. Normally I wouldn't give away people's medical information, but it's been out there on his public page on Facebook and everything. So, and he's been very public with his fight against cancer. So all of our thoughts and prayers go out to Cody. Hopefully he's listening tonight. And get well soon, my friend. And we will have Supernatural Reality back on the air on Spooky TV as soon as he comes out of this and he's ready and healthy and ready to go, because he will beat this. And also, thoughts and prayers go out to our friend Psychic Tiffany Johnson from out there in Minnesota, who suffered a stroke yesterday and is currently in intensive care. So hopefully she recovers as well. She was undergoing surgery this afternoon, and she was paralyzed on half of her body. So hopefully she comes out of that fully healthy and ready to go, because she's one of the nicest people in the world, and she always puts out positive energy into the world, and we should all send some back to her while she's trying to heal up in the hospital out there in Minnesota. And then for those of you who are unfamiliar, we haven't really had a chance to talk about this much on the air because we haven't been on the air that much, but our friend Jeff Belanger, a good friend of the show, he's been a founding member and very active with the Newtown Memorial Fund, because Jeff is a Newtown, Connecticut native. So we had some discussions over the past few weeks about, what we can do here at Spooky Southcoast to kind of help. And normally this is the time of year when we ask people to make donations for our show to help us keep going for the new year, because, we have all the streaming costs and the Hipcast costs that we use for podcasting and all the different fees associated with producing the show, because like Matt said, we don't get paid for it. So we have to kind of do what we can through the donations of our grateful listeners. But this year, please, instead, if you could give to the Newtown Memorial Fund, that would be much, much better if you could do that. Their goal is $26 million. It's $1 million for every victim. But we do want to let you know that they do have an event coming up here in the southeastern Massachusetts area. That'll be January 24th, this coming Thursday at 6:30. It'll be happening at the Met at 1005 Main Street in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. It's a night for Newtown featuring the band The Closers. The cost to enter this event is only $10, so you get a great night with some great people and some great music, and all the proceeds go to the Newtown Memorial Fund. So you can just go to newtownmemorialfund.org for more information, or you can call the Met 401-729-1005. Again, that's this Thursday night, a night for Newtown featuring The Closers at the Met in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I'm going to hopefully try and make it out there. It depends on, hopefully the Patriots can win, and then I get a little time off before the Super Bowl. So, but definitely get out there and support the Newtown Memorial Fund. And if you can't get out there and make it out there, just go to newtownmemorialfund.org and you can donate right on the page. All right, well, let's get right back into the discussion with Isaac Marion, the author of Warm Bodies. And Isaac, I'm always fascinated as a writer myself, and not the creative kind like yourself. I have to write nonfiction and sports because that's what they pay me for. But I'm fascinated with the process of how you can convert your vision from the written word into visual and not drive yourself crazy. I mean, what's it like to hand over your work to somebody else and give them control of that vision? Or, were you heavily involved with the process of the filming?
I was involved in more of a consultant kind of role. Like, I didn't co-write the script or anything, but I did get to read a couple drafts of it and give some feedback, and was like in the early stages of the writing process, and when they were all figuring out kind of how it was going to work, they would call me every so often and have these little conference calls to talk about how they were trying to figure out how to visualize something, or like, Jonathan Levine, the director, would call me to, when he was stuck with a story thing or trying to figure out what my intent was with something. So they definitely seemed to be interested in what I thought, but it wasn't like I wouldn't call it collaborative. It was more like they would ask me about things, but I don't know if I had any direct control over how it happened.
You think there might have been humor in you? You're like, first time on, yeah.
It could. I thought that could have been the case, but it seems like they went above and beyond to like, if they were just humoring me, they probably would have just had lunch with me and talked me up a bit and then left it alone. But they at least a few of the notes that I suggested were actually done in the film. So I don't know if it was directly from my suggestion or other people saw it too, but it seems like they were genuinely interested in what I thought.
Well, it's really interesting when you see the different information out there about the film on the internet, because some websites and some previews are listing it as being a drama or a thriller, and others are listing it as being a comedy. And I think the fact, first of all, that it's about zombies is kind of tainting some people's approach to it to beginning. But how would you describe the film in terms of what type of a genre it would fit into?
Yeah, it's kind of Jonathan Levine has sort of made his whole career off of doing these movies that are pretty hard to classify between comedy and drama. Like his last one, 50-50, was appropriate to the title, probably one of the most evenly split in terms of tone that I've ever seen. It was, you know, within 5 minutes, I'd go from literally crying over what's happened to laughing hysterically, and it just kind of goes back and forth like that, which is a really tricky balancing act to pull off. And I think it was perfect that they chose him for this, because the book is kind of the same balance, where it goes from kind of absurd comedy in one moment to philosophical musings in the next one, and so it's hard to classify him. I think the movie is probably safer to call. It's more of a comedy than the book is, but I don't think I would call it a comedy in itself, because you don't usually have a lot of sincere emotion happening in a straight-up comedy, and this does kind of go back and forth between that absurdity and the moments that you're meant to take seriously and are, you know, fairly moving at times. So I think people are having a hard time of categorizing it, and then you add the zombie element into it, it makes it even more confusing, because not only is it maybe a comedy, maybe a drama, but is it also horror? No one knows what to make of it.
Well, I mean, at least from a slight horror perspective, the Bonies look awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's some genuinely scary moments in it, I would say, and it just sort of does it all, and whether it does it successfully is up to the viewer, but I think it does.
So when they're putting the casting together, and you're involved with it in your consultant role, and you're seeing things start to come together, I mean, what's going through your mind when they say, "Oh yeah, we got John Malkovich to be in your movie"?
That was a pretty big moment. I mean, they'd been telling me all along that they were going to go for someone kind of that caliber, so it wasn't a total shock. I knew they were going to try to get, you know, a major actor to play that character. So that was exciting at the beginning, but, you know, they talked about a few different people and wasn't sure who was going to be, but still the fact that they actually got him on board was it was definitely a moment where I felt like this is really happening, like this is going to be a real movie that they're going to promote and people will care about, at least to some extent. So that was exciting.
And the thing that I immediately noticed because I never saw the trailer until after I'd read the book. Recently, I read the book, and immediately after that I went and checked out the trailer, because I didn't kind of want the movie version to taint how the characters would appear in my mind as I'm reading it. And your R is dressed a little bit more dapper than the one in the film. The one in the film's, you know, in the hoodie that we see, but yours is more of a shirt and tie.
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of kind of aesthetic differences like that just are sort of inevitable to the adaptation process. I think I was actually pretty surprised myself to find out how many people noticed that. I mean, usually when it comes to describing characters, people they just pick whatever they want them to look like in their head, and it doesn't really matter how the author describes it sometimes. But I heard from a lot of people wondering, sort of outraged that was changed, and I thought that was funny, that of all the things that could possibly be warped and destroyed in an adaptation, that it was the clothes that really bothered people. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like that are going to happen, and that stuff like that doesn't bother me too much. I mean, Nicholas Hoult looks a lot like how I imagined him physically anyway, so it doesn't kill me that they changed his clothes.
Is it just me, or does he look like a young Tom Cruise too?
Yeah, I can see that.
He definitely, I'm watching, and I know this is about zombies, but I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, like, that's like young Tom Cruise playing a young Lestat. So it was kind of interesting like that. But and I think one of the things that is a kind of a misconception out there too is people look at it on the surface and they see the way that Nicholas Hoult looks in the trailer, and they see on the book, you know, praise from Stephanie Meyer, and they see that this is a love story between a zombie and a human being, and a zombie's desire to find his humanity again. And I think people are looking at this as zombie Twilight, and I think that's definitely short selling the story and the film.
Yeah, it's been kind of an awkward relationship with that from the beginning, because
you don't strike me as a guy that likes Twilight very much.
Well, I haven't read it. I mean, it's certainly not aimed at me as an audience, I would say.
Like you're not waiting in line at midnight for Breaking Dawn Part 2 is what I'm saying.
No, no. But it's, I think the comparison is inevitable just with all those surfacey things you just mentioned. I mean, it's the same movie studio. It's on the very surface, it's a similar premise, and having the blurb from Stephanie Meyer on the cover certainly sends people in that direction. So I can understand where that comes from. I do wish that people weren't quite so eager just to slap a label on stories and just say, oh, this is this with
Right.
this, or this meets this. I've yet to hear anybody who has actually read the book who thinks it reminds them of Twilight. It's just on the very superficial level, undead couple is all they see, and that's like, what's the most famous undead human couple currently? I mean, it's Twilight. Before that, there was, Frankenstein or whatever, Dracula, various versions of it through time. But yeah, that comparison happens, and my only wish is that people would give it a chance, and because it's actually a very different thing, as you said.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that was different to me too in the casting from the way that I envisioned the book as I read it was the casting of M. And I was just picturing like a bigger, brawnier type of character, but you were lucky enough to get Rob Corddry to play the character in the film, and I'm just wondering, like, if there's anybody that can pull off, having eating up the screen without having a lot of dialogue, it would have to be him.
Yeah, I think he was well cast, even though he doesn't. They're both bald, but other than that, they're very different. I certainly understand that, because in the book, he's described as being 6'5" and hundreds of pounds, like this, basically a giant kind of guy, and to find someone who fits that physically, who's also the right fit personality-wise and acting style, and also fits all their other criteria of star level and all that, would be pretty specific casting call. I think that Rob Corddry is overlooking the physical differences, which really aren't important to the character. It's not like
Sure.
the fact that he's tall is goes back to his childhood or anything. It's kind of just a choice. But the way that he portrays him, I think, is pretty spot on.
I think that he's great. He's one of those few actors too that can pull off, conveying a true general, whether it be a quick laugh or any kind of emotion with facial expressions. And I think that's one. I watched the first 4 minutes, of course, because Fandango has that ability to see that on your YouTube page. And you can just kind of tell that scene where M and R are having that conversation without saying anything. You can tell that he was the perfect guy to kind of pull that off.
Yeah, and he's kind of kind of a unique character in this, because he's presented as sort of the comic relief, the best friend character, but he actually has sort of his own development arc, and there's scenes with him by himself where Nicholas Holt's not there, that are actually kind of emotional. So it's cool to see somebody not just be totally relegated to the comic relief and get to be a real character as well.
Now, in the book, of course, you don't really delve into the backstory of these characters because they don't know what their own backstory is.
Right.
Was that something that when the film is coming together, is that something that they wanted to present in the movie? Do they present it in the movie? Or do they kind of, leave people wondering just as you did with the book?
There was some discussion of that, but in the end, I mean, how could you create a whole backstory for these characters? If it's, I think there wouldn't be a point in creating it for this story. I mean, it may become more relevant in the sequel that I'm writing, but for this as a self-contained story, it would be kind of a waste of time to focus on who they were before, because it's all about them starting from this blank slate where they don't know anything and they don't have any identity, and then sort of building an identity as a new human. So, whatever they had before that isn't relevant to the story.
Well, and you write about some of your influences in your blog and other areas of your website and your social media feeds, and I can imagine that when you're putting together this story as a young writer, you want to be able to make a living doing this, but it seems like you have a pretty good vision of how you want your work to be, and that it's not necessarily a commercial one. So when you're going into this as the artist that you are and as the writer that you are, going into this process of seeing this book turned into a movie, are there points when people, and I'm not saying necessarily the director or the writers that worked on it, but the studio execs, those type of people, is there times when you're kind of rolling your eyes when they're like, oh, we want to make sure that it's just like Walking Dead because people are really into Walking Dead. Is there times when people are bringing up some of these other parts of zombie culture that you just have you kind of groaning like you were a zombie yourself?
Well, I wasn't really involved. I mean, I wasn't there for any of these backroom meetings where they discussed their marketing plans or anything. So my only exposure to that is just seeing how it plays out. And there's been moments here and there where I'm kind of grinning and bearing it and just understanding, because I know what they're going for with the audience and the marketing of this, and to a somewhat lesser extent the movie itself, because I think the marketing is skewing a little bit more lowbrow than the movie actually is. It sort of will catch some people by surprise, I think, when they go see it. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing has been a strange experience for me in that the stuff that I normally write is not as pulpy as this. I mean, it's the first time I've ever written about a well-known monster or anything like that. Usually the stuff is, it's not like super literary, cerebral stuff, but it all has some element of the paranormal in it, or at least the surreal. But I've never really written something that's quite this clearly attached to a pop culture phenomenon, and so it was sort of a departure from my style in general, and then to have that departure be the thing that is now defining my whole career and pretty much my whole life at this point is a bit strange. And to see some of the avenues that it goes into, and the people that are talking about it, and the way it's being advertised, and just kind of have to just kind of sit back and laugh at the whole thing, because if I would have imagined something I'd written, having shirts in Hot Topic, right, based on something I'd written, would never have occurred to me.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, as a writer, you never expect that Hot Topic is going to carry a line of products based on your vision. I mean, that's something that very few any author could really claim, maybe with the exception of Stephanie Meyer.
Yeah, that was definitely surprising to me. I mean, it's been a slow process of acclimating to the difference between how I perceive my career path and the way that it's going. But as far as like how it's perceived publicly, but so it's if I'd suddenly showed up now, I mean, if my 2 years old self, when I was just writing this book, had seen it now without any warning, I'd probably be really confused and possibly terrified. But it's been a slow process of just sort of accepting that this is what it is, and afterwards I'll have my opportunity to do all my weird intellectual stuff.
Well, but then do you worry, though, with this, being a book and a film, and then, of course, the sequel being both a book and probably a film as well if this one's successful, do you worry about being pigeonholed as the guy that writes the zombie stuff?
Yeah, I've thought about that. I'm not really sure how it works with writing. I mean, I know with like as an actor getting typecast, it happens because they will only want to cast you in those movies. But as a writer, I'm the one creating the stories, so it's not like they're going to offer me a role. I'm creating the role, so I don't really know what would happen. I mean, if someone gets very well known for a certain type of book and they suddenly write a very different one, if they're successful already, it's hard to imagine them to say, no, we don't want to publish it because you're a famous writer already. So they kind of have to do it. It seems like whether it fits the mold or not. So that's what I'm hoping is the case. I'm not being naive in that regard.
Well, speaking of being an actor, you didn't get the opportunity to play like a background zombie?
I did.
You did?
Yeah, it's very hard to see. It's very, very background, but I can recognize myself, but it's not even quite in focus. But I am the only guy walking by in the background, so the scene where they walk through the metal detectors in the airport is the blurry shape going through the background is me.
And that actually made me laugh in the trailer, how he walks through the metal detector and the zombie guard is just standing there waving them.
Yeah.
the thing over everybody.
Yeah, they captured that idea of them just sort of repeating their functions in life without really having any reason to do it anymore.
I know a lot of TSA agents that are alive that look just like that, doing the same thing. So, what do you think it is though about? I mean, I know that the vampire, of course, has always been a romanticized figure. So we've always been able to identify with the vampires in our literature and in our film and our entertainment. And I think werewolves are also something that goes through its cycles, no pun intended there, because they are characteristic of the awkwardness that we feel in our own change and metamorphosis as people. But what is it about zombies that have made them so popular all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, they've always been around. I mean, since the 60s, they've been at least a known figure in pop culture. But it does seem like there was a resurgence recently. It's hard to say. I mean, I think there's the reasons that I'm interested in them are not the same as what most people are interested in them, because to me, I'm only interested in them in the way that I wrote them as you know, studies of humanity, and sort of that I'm always been fascinated by what they are and like what's going on with the zombies themselves. Most traditional zombie fiction is not really interested in that. They just are used as props and they get mowed down, and don't. It's more about the humans and conflicts between the humans, and the zombies are more of like sort of just a natural force of destruction. So as to that, I can't say I understand the fascination. I think as a creature that sort of represents death in a very personified form, I think it's really interesting, but I don't often see that being explored. So it part of it could be, I mean, they tend to go hand in hand with apocalypse scenarios, which are fascinating kind of for their own reasons, and I think maybe that might be a big part of it. Most zombie movies you see nowadays also have an apocalypse or post-apocalypse, which I think I understand why that's interesting, but that's a whole other topic.
Well, then I have to say, as somebody who works in the paranormal field myself and talks about these type of things quite a bit here on our program, and yourself being somebody who wrote a book about zombies, are you kind of sick of hearing the term zombie apocalypse? Because I know I am.
I'm kind of, even the word zombie itself is I don't know, the whole thing. I mean, even before I wrote this book, I felt like it was a bit played out, and that's sort of why the book is somewhat a satire of the genre at the same time as being in it, because I wasn't trying to like contribute to the genre. It was more of a play on the genre. So yeah, I think, I don't know, if another standard zombies kill everyone, shoot them all thing comes out, I think it's time for a new thing.
Well, that's coming.
Oh yeah,
that's coming this summer with.
I won't name any names.
Yeah, and then I think I thought I heard there was a film adaptation of Stephen King's Cell coming down the pike at some point too.
Oh really?
Which I have to say is if there's a Mount Everest or a Mount Rushmore even of Stephen King books, then I think Cell would be the toilet paper in the bathroom of the park at the bottom of it.
Wasn't that one? Was that the one that was just an ebook?
No, actually, this was a real published book, and people bought it by the millions. And
cell phones turn people into zombies.
That's the one. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I love almost everything the guy writes, but his foray into the zombie literature, not so good. I'm sure I'd like to take that one back.
Good to know.
So now, of course, we mentioned the idea of the sequel, and you have to be careful, though, I'm sure, as a writer, because you were purposely not putting things into the first book, such as, you don't tell the story of what happened, of how they got to be that way, and you don't even share, I don't think I'm giving away too much here, you don't even share R's real name, because, it's more about the characters in their current state than as you said. But I'm assuming there's probably a lot of pressure on you from fans to kind of delve into that in the sequel.
Yes, which again is something that surprises me. I'm constantly caught off guard by the things that people want or don't want in the story. Like the the suit and tie and finding out R's name and things that questions I get over and over again, and I'm thinking like, why is that the important thing? It seems like kind of a minor issue to me, but yeah, I mean, I'm not really listening to the suggestions that I get in YouTube comments or something as to what I should put in the sequel. It's everyone wants a different thing, and some of them are really dumb ideas. So I'm just writing the story that I'm coming up with, and I think, I don't know, it'll be an interesting experience for a lot of reasons, because for one thing, the sequel is going to be different in some ways. Not so much different, but more complex, a little darker, a little more real, I guess, in some ways. Less of a romp through genre tropes and more of like a genuine story. So I'm hoping people are willing to come along for that, and not have to be winking at it in order to digest a story like that, like to be able to take it as a serious thing, which the first one does to some extent, but it also has a lot of winks in it. And so in that respect, it'll be interesting to see if I can sort of write a sequel that's not just episode 2 of Warm Bodies, but like its own book that is it's not a standalone story by any means, but an evolution off of what started with that book instead of just more of the same. And then also just the contrast between the books and what people know about it from the movie, which is already somewhat stark between this book and this movie. It's going to be even more stark between the sequel and that movie. So I think some of the 12-year-olds who love the movie and come to this book might be a little surprised by what they find, but I'm excited to see what happens.
I was going to say, that's got to be the tough part, though, is you want to write the sequel to the book and not write a second book off of what's in the movie.
Right, and which wouldn't even be possible because the story diverges somewhat. But what'll be even more interesting is to see what happens if they do decide that they want to adapt the sequel to a movie, because there's some choices they made in the movie that going to make it harder to reconnect to where the story is going. So I don't know. There's a lot of kind of multiple layers of fictional reality going on in all these different pieces, and then even just sort of in the public perception of it, which is pretty at odds with what is actually going on in the book, I've found. So it'll be interesting to see if it all comes together. I can't really control that, so I'm just going to go onwards and see what happens.
And of course, as you said, you're looking forward to also branching out and working on some of your other writing as well. And I know that you've referenced online that you kind of have various stages of multiple things in the works too. I mean, what are some of these other ideas that you're working on?
Well, first of all, before this, I don't know. I don't know if it's the Warm Bodies series or whatever you want to call it, but. I have just finished a novella that is sort of a prequel to Warm Bodies, and that is actually going to be coming out in ebook form later this month. But so that's what I've been working on, and I'm about to start writing a sequel. And then after that, I have about four ideas for other novels that some of them I've started writing a little bit, some of them are just ideas, but they're all completely different from this and from each other. They're all pretty strange and hard to describe so far until I get more developed into them. But I'm definitely excited to. It's not that I'm tired of this story or this world. I'm really excited to dive back into it after seeing kind of the community that's grown up around the first book and all the interactions I've had with readers. It gets me really excited to go back into that world and develop it further. But when it's all done, I could see myself taking a break for a while and purging my mind of any thoughts of zombies, and then kind of going in some very different directions, which will be exciting.
Well, I can say, and I was reading over your Facebook page and seeing some of your tweets as well, and you talk about the fan base for the book, and it definitely is a very rabid fan base for it. And it's funny because you're very accessible to everybody online. So if people want to get in touch with you, you seem to respond to them and respond to them, no different than any other friend they might have on social media. But what was cracking me up about it is, they're these same people that are like, how come, please respond to me, are the same people that are like, well, what's taking you so long to write the sequel? Well, because you keep asking him questions online.
I need it. It's a good point. I'll start telling him that.
Yeah, be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm disconnecting. I'm writing. So
it's funny because there's two different camps there. There's people who write me and say, I'm sure you're way too busy to ever even read this, and I won't expect a reply, but I just wanted to say blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people that are like, please answer me. Why aren't you answering me?
Yeah, why aren't you on Facebook all day, every day like I am?
And the reality is somewhere in between there. I mean, I get moments here and there to kind of go back through everything and answer a lot of it at once, but then there'll be long stretches where I can't.
Well, I'll say one thing that has my wheels turning is I'm a sports writer, like I said, and when I'm in the stadium now, I look around. I'm like, okay, so if we had to live here, here's where we would put this, and here's where we would put that. So it's kind of it's got me thinking floor plan if this ever does happen.
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into figuring out the feasibility of that. I mean, I did describe it as being a bigger stadium than we know of now, because it does. It's not like sci-fi by any means, but it takes place at some indefinite point in the future. So I was able to take a few liberties with architecture, make it a little bigger than it realistically would be by today's standards.
Sure, and of course you're from Seattle, so you're used to the Kingdome, not like out here where we've got the smaller parks and stadiums. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have to say, when I first heard about this story, last year when you were coming on the program, my eyebrows were raised a little bit. But when I read the book, I love the story, and I love the characters, and I'm looking forward to going and seeing the film. Is it February 1st that it comes out?
Yeah.
So people can start getting in line now, just like you did for Breaking Dawn Part 2. That was Isaac and I out in line. We were the first ones dressed as whatever their names are. I don't even know. Edward and Bella, is it right?
Oh, yeah.
See, you knew. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we definitely look forward to the sequel. Now, you said the prequel is done. That's coming out soon as an ebook.
Yeah, it's going to be an ebook first, just trying to rush it to get it in time for the movie, but then hopefully a print edition will come later. But
all right. So it should be out in the next few weeks then.
Yeah, the plan is 28th to come out in ebook form.
Excellent. Do they have a price point on it already, or?
I don't know about price. I think I actually get to set the price, but that's a business discussion for later.
All right, so people can just pay attention to your website, to your blog, to your Twitter, and you'll have all the information up there when it comes out.
Definitely.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Isaac Marion, author of Warm Bodies, and we promise we will not refer to you as the zombie guy.
Thank you.
All right, have a great night.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye. So I have to say that I'm always fascinated as a writer myself, and I use that in the the most technical sense of the word, because I'm not a creative guy like Isaac is, but I'm always fascinated the process of creating the characters and coming up with the story and telling the story, and then giving that away almost when you put it in somebody else's hands to make it into a movie. So. That's why I wanted to kind of ask those type of questions. And Matt, you weren't here. Were you here when we had the writers on for that movie about the Dybbuk box? Were you here when we did that?
No, I wasn't.
Because that was a similar line of questioning that I had for them about that process, and they had actually written an updated version of Poltergeist that is supposedly being made at some point, but I still haven't heard about that. That's one that I really want to question them about when that comes out. So. What do you think of the idea of telling a zombie story from a zombie perspective?
I think it's an interesting angle, at least. I mean, it's not explored very often. I mean, like he said, like Isaac said, it's kind of used as just kind of like an object in a movie to discuss the different characters and their interaction. It's just kind of like some sort of threat instead of like protagonist, antagonist. type thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go so far as to call it like a literary device, but it does allow for, reflection, and it does allow for introspection. And I have to say, for a guy who supposedly was dead, the character of R probably had more humanity than most people that you'll read about in many books. So it's definitely worth checking out. And it's not often that I get the chance to read fiction anymore, because I'm always reading books for the show, and they always tend to be nonfiction. So I do love the chance when I can get into a different world and a different perspective. So that's why, I when I read the book, I tried to pull myself out of, I don't want to say disproving or proving, but usually
you didn't want to pick it apart.
Right. Normally I'm looking for like factual information out of these books. So I'm like,
this can't be zombies.
Right. This doesn't fit.
Zombies don't think.
Yeah. There's when I read Zombies by Dr. Bob Curran, it didn't say anything about zombies wearing ties.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to. Well, and it's freeing to be able to get your mindset out of that, and to be able to just kind of experience the characters as the story's being told. So what was the last book you read? Have you had a chance to read anything?
I've actually been catching up on my graphic novels.
Really?
Yes. Well, I just caught up on The Walking Dead, which is...
I'm on like the third issue.
It kind of ruined like the series.
The show?
Me. Yeah. Because now that I watch the show, I'm like, the show doesn't really...
Well, that's the point, is they don't want the show to follow along the comic books.
Yeah, I know what they're doing, but there's like certain things that I'm just like, I don't know.
So have you become one of these?
Make sense a little bit.
Have you become one of these people that are like comic book purists?
No, because I still enjoy the show. So
I don't know how I feel about the show.
Yeah.
You weren't here last May, I think it was. We did a show about the show, about The Walking Dead.
Yep.
And my wife and son were here. That's
all I'm saying is they better cut off Rick's arm. They have to.
That's
it's a thing. They have to cut his arm off.
But you have to look and see like what's the plausibility. I mean, there's a reason why there was no...
in the comic, they cut everybody's arm off. They can cut Rick's arm off in the show.
There's no Evil Dead TV show because they didn't want to keep putting a chainsaw on Ash's arm every week. So, but when we had my wife and son in here, son infamously, said an inappropriate word on the air, which was awesome. Yeah. But I wanted to make it my text message sound. But when we were talking about that, I had a lot of criticisms for the show. And now I've lightened up on it a little bit. I think this past season has kind of changed my mind because, thank God, they got off the boring farm. But I mean, at least now, we're starting to see the bigger picture of what it all means. Right. And I like the fact that it's taking kind of a twist toward, that post-apocalyptic society in the vein of The Stand, more so than just being about let's sit on this farm and pick off the zombies as they come one by one.
Yeah, yeah.
And because I have to say, you can say whatever you want about the comic book, and there's also, and this is a whole nother rant for a whole nother night, but with, the tablet and my phone and everything, and I can go back and read old comic books, there's a big difference between what qualifies as a good comic now and what did in the past.
Oh, yeah.
I think now there's too much of that indie feel to comic books where you can have, 4 pages of nothing but panels where it's slow moving action and there's no development to the character. So, but even so, you want to say that I think the characters on the TV show were people that I didn't necessarily like or care about.
Yeah, I could say that too.
And there's, I have to say myself that it was probably this season before I knew all of their names. Actually, no, that's not true. I don't know all their names. I don't know the name of that blonde girl that I think is Herschel's daughter.
Which?
The one that's making goo-goo eyes at the kid that always disappears. His name I know, I just can't think of it right now.
No, not Andrea, is it?
No. The kid that always disappears. Rick's son. What's his name?
Oh, Carl.
I can't. Carl. I was just blanking on his name.
Yeah.
I know that because my wife and I constantly make jokes about Carl.
Sometimes I get the I want to say novel, but the comic book. It's a comic book.
It is. It's a comic.
The comic book and the show confused because it's
one
and the same
on the show. I think it's Herschel's daughter, the blonde girl there.
Yeah.
The one that's like 17, 18. She's making goo-goo eyes at Carl, who's like 12.
Yeah, is she that old?
She looks that way to me.
Yeah.
I'm just getting a very, if we want to get really nerdy, I'm getting a very Queen Amidala, Anakin Skywalker vibe from them.
Well, you said you didn't read the
I haven't made it
novel.
that far yet.
Okay,
But.
well, they kind of have a thing between Carl and Sophia, but Sophia's dead.
Right, so that's not,
So which was like,
yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
That's what happens. Well, the one of the things that I find interesting about the show is how fired up people get about it, and how much they, they have, like Chris, okay, our show's content director, Chris Balzano. I can't text him during The Walking Dead because he's watching the show, and I'm like, dude, what, you watch live TV?
Yeah, can you just pause it?
Don't you know this is like 2013 now? We don't do that. I don't even watch football games live if I'm watching them from home. Because, without that 30-second skip, you have to wait for things, and we don't wait for things anymore in this world. But
we don't have to.
Yeah, that's where we've gotten to as a society.
Oh,
but I think that the way that people view it, though, is like they don't want to miss a single minute of it. And there's been maybe 4 or 5 TV shows in the last 10 years that I can think people felt that way about. And when I'm looking at Lost, when I'm looking at The Sopranos, when I'm looking at shows like that, I just don't know if Walking Dead fits.
I don't know if it's as epic as everybody makes it seem. And
Can you hit me up with the chat room on the monitor while we're talking about this? Because I want to see. I'm sure there's a backlash against me right now.
I don't even really want to say the word epic because I don't like when people use that.
Right.
But aside from that, I forgot what we were talking about.
Few shows are epic.
Yeah. The Walking Dead kind of, it starts out really good. This is like every episode. It starts out really good, then nothing really happens.
Right.
Nothing really happens, and then like something cool happens at the end and gets you to watch the next
week.
episode.
Or get you to watch Talking Dead so you can see that couple of minutes of footage from the next episode.
I haven't seen any Talking Dead.
Yeah, my wife watches it, and she enjoys it. I mean, Chris Hardwick's good in that role.
Is he?
But
he's good in something.
Yeah, he's good in that role. But to watch a bunch of people sit around and like pick apart this episode of a TV show, like it's one thing if you and I are going to do that kind of, when we were working together and we might tear apart an episode of Lost.
At the gathering at the water cooler. If you would.
Yeah, that's fine. But, I just don't see the need to have a national audience sit there and pick apart a show together. And to ask, celebrities, hey, come and watch this with us and then pick it. I don't know. But what do I know? I'm sitting here doing a show that 5 people are listening to while they're making, tons of TV
This is a
shows.
random thought, but do you remember on that talking about Lost thing, and just Marilyn Manson showed up? And
what?
Do you remember? I just had that random thought.
Remember? Talking about Lost?
Yeah. You remember the talking on that when they used to talk about the Lost? They had that little like talk show or whatever.
They did?
Yeah, at the I think it was the end of the last episode, and then Marilyn Manson was in the
audience.
Oh,
really?
He had that portrait of Locke that he gave him. That was weird. It just popped in my head. Just popped
in your head. So you're expecting that when they finally have the last episode of The Walking Dead, he'll be there.
It's probably
going to
be like somebody like Rob Zombie or something.
Right. It's probably that would be fitting.
Somebody weird. James Franco is gonna come out with his pillow puppet thing.
By the way, I still insist that James Franco is that guy on the commercials with the bald head that's like promoting the products. I swear to God, that's Franco.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, all right. Well, we got about 5 minutes left here in the program, and I do want to let everybody know that we're having another Legend Trips event. I don't know if you want to make it to this one because you haven't made it to like the last. Like,
I heard there might be a second night.
Of Lizzie Borden.
The Lizzie Borden one, which I'm going to try to go to.
We're talking about that. The one on the 23rd, Saturday, February 23rd, is sold out.
Yep.
So we were listening to some of our regular attendees who couldn't make it that night, and they were suggesting the idea of putting a second night on. And there was some other people who were like, yeah, if you did a second night, I'd go. So if we can get enough interest, we need it like for the next couple of days. Like you got to let me know, tim@spookysouthcoast.com or hit me up on Facebook and let me know if you would be interested in buying a $135 ticket to come to Dead of Winter on February 22nd if we open that night up. Because I checked, we can do it. So if we have enough interest, we will. But we only have about a month, to sell out that entire event. So because if we don't sell it out, then it's not really fair to the house to kind of turn it over to us for the night. So we have to make sure that we can sell it out. So if you'd be interested, just let me know, tim@SpookySouthcoast.com, or hit me up on Facebook and let me know that you would definitely be interested in buying a ticket for Friday, February 22nd. And if there's enough interest, we'll do it. But I'm hoping you can come out with us to the Houghton Mansion in April 5th through the 7th. That's going to be a great event because I'm thinking we're going out there Friday night.
Yep.
We're going to have
a whole weekend, right?
Right. We're going to have a Friday night meet and greet where we can just get trashed if we want because we're going to be in the hotel.
Yeah.
Or across the street from the hotel.
Might as well take the first night and just relax.
Yeah, have fun. We'll party with some of our paranormal friends that'll be out there with us.
High spirits.
Exactly. And then Saturday morning, we can wake up. We're right there at the base of Mount Greylock, the tallest peak in Massachusetts. Maybe we take a hike. Maybe we go see some of the other haunted sites around there. There's some that you can't access publicly.
Is that all on the Houghton Mansion property?
No, it's within like a 25-minute drive of the mansion. But we'd have all day Saturday morning and afternoon. There's a certain tunnel that's out there that's rumored to be very haunted that I don't want to promote on the air because it's you can't legally go into it. But I might want to at least go to it and see it.
Yep.
I don't want to encourage anybody trying to get into it, but I would at least like to be there and say that I've seen it. And there's going to be, some interesting opportunities to do some cool stuff. And I can just imagine what it'd be like having, continental breakfast together like we did after the Slater Mill event, where everybody's kind of just sitting there bleary-eyed but talking about all the stuff that happened. So it's going to be an entire weekend. And it's only $149 for a ticket to the event.
That's good.
That gets you into the meet and greet. That gets you into the night's investigation on Saturday with dinner included Saturday.
Yeah, it's only $50 a day, right?
Really? Yeah. So, and we're working on securing a hotel deal up there because we know that everybody's going to be coming from down this way. So we will have, for sure, some sort of hotel deal. We're just working out the particulars now. It may be because it's still kind of ski season at that point, and there's still a lot of people up there. It may be that we have to spread people out over a couple of different areas if necessary, but I'm working on trying to avoid that and keeping everybody together as best I can. So hopefully you can join us for that, but if not, we'll send you back some dirt from the top of Mount Greylock or something. I'm just going to try to load up the Switch over here.
Oh, okay. This is what we do every week?
No, I forgot to do it while we were talking. So we'll see what happens because I really need this to go off on its own.
It's one of these babies.
One of these babies.
Yeah, so it could be ready. All right. Well, we will be back next week. As I said, it's kind of up in the air about what we're going to do. We may be doing a very hard hitting topic, if things work out and shake out that way. But if not, it's going to be our 7th anniversary either way. So we will definitely have some sort of recognition of that. We want to have some of our favorite spooky South Coast memories. So hit me up online, Twitter, Facebook, email spookycrew@SpookySouthCoast.com. Share with us some of your favorite spooky South Coast memories, and of course, you can call in as well next week if we take calls on the air about it, because I really want to know what people think of the last 7 years, because it's motivation for the next 7.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, who knows? We might not be here that long. What we need is a good 2-hour show where we can have a lot of people praise what we do, and then we can give it to station management and see, they like us. They really like us. All right. So we will be back next week for all that. I'm assuming that Moniz will be back too as well. So we'll have the gang all here. And if you can make it, Matt. And hopefully you will be here as well. Remember, if you want to catch up with any old episodes of the show, just go to iTunes or anywhere you can find a podcast. Until next week, we want you all to stay spooktacular.
The station the South Coast turns to for local news, talk, weather, and sports. WBSM New Bedford. AM 1420, WBSM.
From ABC News, I'm Todd Ent. An Islamic militant now considered one of the most wanted terrorists in the world is said to be behind the 4-day hostage standoff in the